Hello, and welcome to Book 5, Chapter 12 of You Should Be Reading. Today I'd like to talk to you about Little Brother by Cory Doctorow. Now, this is a book that has some similarity, or has one similarity, I should say, with How Few Remain, in that I have very conflicting opinions about it, very conflicting feelings. It is a book all about um, basically a 17-year-old boy and his friends, nominally, who end up being around the area of a terrorist attack. There's a bombing in San Francisco. At least I think it's San Francisco. Uh, Somewhere down, yeah, San Francisco. Pretty sure it is. Where they bomb a bridge, and one of the four friends ends up getting stabbed as they're trying to get away from all the crowds that are heading for the underground subways and the shelters and whatnot. And they end up flagging down a vehicle to try and get help for him. And it turns out that vehicle is one of the vehicles that have the Department of Homeland Security on it. And they round up all four of them and escort them off to a prison for a while they interrogate them. And our main character, who is Marcus Yallo, he ends up getting the worst of it before they are released, and the entire city kind of goes into lockdown in terms of very 1984 Big Brother is watching you kind of stuff going on. And it ends up going on from there with Marcus deciding to rebel against the Department of Homeland Security and prove that they're being idiots by doing a lot of stuff that can and does blur that line between activism and terrorism. Because it's a very gray area what they're doing here. And I'll say right off the bat, I enjoyed the story. I liked reading the story. It was well written enough. I've never read anything else by Cory Doctorow, though I understand he tends to write uh, books like this with a very heavy-handed message. Now, this may not be entirely true. As I said, I've only read the one book, and I've only heard a little bit about the author. But what I have heard is that he tends to be kind of heavy-handed when it comes to the message, and it's true in this one. He definitely lays home the message of the Department of Homeland Security or any government spying on their citizens, privacy rights, as well as other rights of their citizens, and that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights should be sacrosanct. There's some very strong activism messages in this, as well as a lot of other heavy-handedness, which I'll get into in a minute. But the thing that, see, I liked the story for what it was. I enjoyed it. But it also made me uncomfortable with some of the situations being depicted in here, as well as some of the things that our hero, Marcus Yallo, ends up doing and thinking he's in the right to do. And he may be, but that is a sort of thing, that is a sort of situation that it is beyond my ability and beyond my capability to levy a judgment on. This is the sort of thing that an actual judge has to make that judgment call as to whether or not actions were justifiable or not. Now, the fun thing, it goes on from there. His old friends, the ones that were with him during the attack, end up slowly drifting away, one of whom did not make it out of that prison camp. And he spends most of the book believing he's dead. Now, there's a bit of a backhanded spoiler there because this friend isn't dead. He's still at the camp, at the prison, and there's a lot of things like that. Uh, it's amazing in terms of the message is trying to get across, because it is trying to get across this message. It is, the book itself is trying to put forth that spotlight on the issue of uh, privacy rights, the rights of citizens, and the rights of the fact that the government can and does violate those rights in terms of national security. Because, I mean, especially down in the States, you have the Patriot Act, which literally allows them to suspend rights of individuals for so long if they believe them to be uh, involved in terrorism. Now, I am not any sort of an expert on the American system, so I don't know if that is completely accurate, but from everything I have heard, it seems to be. And it delves into that issue, that the government taking advantage of people and suspending their rights. And it layers on offense after offense at the hands of the government agents, who are the villains of this piece. And that's where the book also is a little uncomfortable, because, hear me out on this. Uh, the government agents, one in particular who is the leader of them here in this little book, uh, there's a lot of stuff attributed to them, a lot of things that they do that normal people would look on and be like, oh my God, there's no way that that could happen in my country. There's no way that could happen in America, etc., etc. Because they're almost pushed to the point of being cartoonish. Um, the villains of the piece are bad guys, and I don't mean that they're laughable, cartoonish. I mean kind of like the Saturday morning cartoon villains, where you had bad guys that were basically, they were bad guys and they did bad things. And the reason they did bad things was because they were bad guys. They didn't have an actual motivation beyond they were bad guys, so they're going to do bad things. And there's no real explanation given in this to kind of help explain why they're going to the level that they're going, the Department of Homeland Security agents in this. In fact, it is almost subtly hinted that they were just waiting for the excuse to do this in the first place. So they're almost at that level of being cartoonish villains in this book. And because of this, there are a number of what many people would probably call atrocities. Gassing an entire crowd of hundreds of people, where there's women, older people, young children involved in an outdoor concert, just gassed for no other reason. Then they wouldn't disperse, so we gassed them, and then we arrest a whole bunch of them and process them through the system, etc., etc. They end up having people questioned and interrogated because their public transit, basically they have these public transit things that are all RFID'd and can be monitored where they go. So they're monitoring where people are going all the time, and when their normal patterns of using the public transit are abnormal, then they start questioning them as to why they're doing that and where they're going, which could be an invasion of privacy, some people would think. There's lots of things like that in here that they do, clamping down on this, that, and the other thing, arresting people, making people disappear. All this is going on in the book, and because of this cartoonish bad guy, the way that they're problem that they have here, where they're doing bad things just because they're the bad guys. It sets it up so that the heroes of our book, Marcus and them, and all the things they do are almost automatically cast in a positive light. Because yes, they may be doing questionable things, but they're doing it for the good, the best intentions. They're doing it for a good reason, a good cause. And that may be true, but to me, it gives the entire book, especially because this book itself is aimed towards younger readers, like teenagers, is what this is more or less aimed towards. And because of that situation in this book and the fact of where it is aimed, what the audience for it is, it almost gives me a feel that it's kind of, that this book is almost propaganda in a way, where it's propping up rebellion against authority, not because that authority is tyrannical and needs to be rebelled against, but because rebellion against authority is a positive thing. I may be reading too much into it. I don't know, but it felt that way to me, and that too made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But the book was good. It was a very easy read. I breezed through it in about a week for a book this size. That's pretty good, and it was well written, quite enough. It definitely felt, because it's told from the first person perspective of Marcus. He's the one telling the story, our main character. You might have a little bit of the unreliable narrator in that respect, but because he's telling it, the story is written in such a way that it feels like a 16, 17-year-old kid is telling the story. It feels authentic. It doesn't ever feel to me like it's somebody older trying to be younger. No, it works for what it is. And there's a lot of neat little things in here about information technology and the internet and protecting yourself in terms of how things are. They don't go into a great lot of detail, but they do highlight how some systems work, information and security systems, as well as how they can be broken and how they can be manipulated. They're mentioned in here briefly, just as a way to help further the plot and whatnot. But it's quite fascinating. There's a couple afterwards from security specialist and another guy, but it's pretty cool. There's a sequel to this book called Homeland, where apparently he goes, our hero, Marcus, faces off against the Department of Homeland Security again. And I don't know if I'm going to read it. I'm going to give myself some time away from this particular book, and we'll see. If I happen to see the Department of Homeland, I should say, the sequel, I may pick it up and have a brief page through it and see if it catches my interest. If it does, I'll pick it up and read it, but I don't know. But it is interesting. So whether or not this book is something that might appeal to you is something that you yourself are going to have to ask. Whether the author is being very antagonistic towards government and whatnot, whether he's browbeating his message and trying to indoctrinate people, indoctrinate children, I don't know. I can't say one way or the other. All I can say is it felt to me almost like that. Now, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to Cory Doctorow. I'm going to say that I don't think he is, but it had that feeling to it, to me, and that sort of thing doesn't really sit well with me. Preachy books don't really appeal to me all that much. So I don't know. But that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think about Little Brother by Cory Doctorow. Let me know if you know of any other books similar to this one in story. Maybe not propaganda-y, but something similar that you think I might like to check out. Throw those comments in the comment section. I'd love to get a discussion going with people. And until next time, my friends, remember, maybe you should be reading Little Brother by Cory Doctorow. I was going to say Neil Gaiman because Neil Gaiman's up there. By Cory Doctorow. So do all that, and I'll see you next time.